welcome to Barely Filtered. Today we have on a really special guest. This is somebody who the Instagram algorithm knew I would love, so she showed up on my page because a lot of guests like Callie Means and Casey Means, who talked a lot about the basically toxic food that we are fed in the United States and how it's affecting our health and how its standards vary wildly across the globe. And Alex Clark is a pioneer, I would say, in this space. She's bringing these problems not only to Congress and to big corporations like Kellogg's, but also to the average person like us, and putting things in layman's terms. This is somebody who's like a self-proclaimed chicken nugget lover, and she also was not informed of the toxic food situation that our country was in, but in recent years has educated herself and is on a mission to spread awareness to everybody, but especially people like you and me who, you know, we just need to know the facts. We need to know what the truth is. And despite what your politics are, I think we all can agree that being poisoned by food and then fed drugs that are making us more sick is not something anybody wants, despite whether you are a Republican or Democrat. So I have her here today on Zoom, and I am so excited. These facts, let me just get you guys ready. This girl shares some mind-blowing facts. She talks really fast. She's very articulate, and you're going to learn a lot. So buckle up. This episode is probably one of my favorite. I have women on who talk a lot about reproductive rights and maybe are a little more left-leaning. And I also have women and men on who are right-leaning, some more controversial than others. I just want to make it known that I am a moderate. I like to look at each individual cause, case, problem as an individual, and I don't affiliate, honestly, with either party, although I think that there's certain things that we can take from either side. So I'm not saying that so that you guys think that I'm neutral and love me. It's just, it really is the truth. And so if you hear some things that you don't agree with, I think that it's important that we all practice being able to tolerate hearing things we don't agree with, and knowing that, you know, these are facts that are backed up by science, but, you know, there are facts that are backed up by science that people reject all the time. This is just an opportunity to get us thinking about what cannot be denied as a public health crisis in the United States. It is so great to speak to you, Alex. I have Alex Clark here. And I mean, I know so many people want to talk to you right now because you have this way that's so captivating about really telling the American people all the things that were once a conspiracy that now everyone is seeing, oh, wait, those conspiracy theorists, maybe they were right. Did people call you a conspiracy theorist like in the beginning of all of this?
So for, you know, these fringe beliefs that now are obviously all true. So yeah, it's just, you know, it's one of the same. And I always say, just give it 6 months and then you'll see that I was right. And then we'll just call it a day. And, you know, I won't hold it against you.
I know, that's the thing. I think people need to give themselves a little more grace about being able to change your mind about things. Like, it's okay if you were really scared. Like, I got the COVID shot and I didn't give it to my kids. And I remember that was a really big point of contention with some of my followers who were like, well, if your kids kill my grandparents, then, like, you know, that whole thing. And I'm like, well, I'm still not giving them the vaccine. But now I wish I didn't get the vaccine. Now that I hear stories about really the damage that it did do to people, I don't know what it did to my body. Who knows?
Yeah. And that is so relatable. There's so many people listening that have made medical decisions where the truth is, weren't given true informed consent or felt pressured. That should never be the case, especially in the United States of America. You should never feel that external pressure or feel like you don't have enough time, you don't have enough information to make decisions like that. And so you're seeing immense amounts of regret and just, I wish I would have known this, I would have made a different decision. But you know, we move forward, we do the best that we can. You don't know what you don't know in the moment. And so I think that there's a lot of grace for people in that and moving forward. And now we've learned so much, I think, from that mistake in 2020, where hopefully there is never again a situation where future generations of Americans, where our kids are pressured to put something into their body that they do not want in their body, right? So we've kind of learned from this, and then hopefully they'll never have to go through that again.
Totally, totally. And I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but when I hear, I was never an anti-vaxxer. I vaccinated my kids. Like here, anti-vaxxers were like, you'd be literally burned at the stakes. And also it was interesting because it was kind of a left thing. It was like the people who were on the far left. All the blue-haired women were the anti-vaxxers. Now it's like the anti-vaxxers are the right-wing people. And why is this even a political thing? Like why is like the toxins we put in our body have to like live on one side of the political spectrum? And it always feels like it has to be this extreme. I don't know. Do you have something to say on that? Because I'm confused about that. Like, why is like environmentalism a left problem, but then like when we're saying we're ingesting all this plastic, like then that's kind of a right thing to say that there's plastic in our food.
Well, it's interesting because I would agree with you that environmentalism was typically more of a left wing issue. That was a more liberal passion point. And now I actually think we're seeing a lot of people, myself included, start to really care about this and talk about it amongst the conservative right. There has been a total switch. A lot of it has to do with the pandemic. That's what it was for me during the pandemic. Us mandating that vaccine all of a sudden opened my eyes to big pharma and big food corruption. So I never cared about any of this. I was like the chicken nugget princess, inject Dr. Pepper into my veins. I lived off of it. I did not give a flying crap about organic food or GMOs. I didn't even know what a GMO was. So that just led me down a huge rabbit hole, but I definitely didn't care about environmentalism. And now, because of caring about the food and pharma corruption, I've learned about things like regenerative farming. And the cool thing about that is, I care about that from a healthier food standpoint, more nutrient dense food that we're eating coming from more nutrient dense soil, but all of that also positively impacts the environment. And if you are a liberal that cares about this issue and you care about it because of like things like climate change and stuff like that, I mean, you're talking about carbon emissions and all of this. It all has to do with that. I mean, regenerative farming now is absolutely a topic that both, I think, the crunchy granola liberals care about, and now you've got this like new generation of crunchy moms on the right that really care about it, which is very cool. I mean, we're seeing this topic of food and pharma and everything that RFK is now saying that he's going to bring to the Trump administration in 2025. This is something that a lot of Americans can get behind. So whether you like Trump or not, or didn't vote for Trump or not, I mean, it's really hard for me to imagine that you can't at least say, okay, I loathe Trump, but I am excited to see what RFK is able to get done on these topics. This is something I think every American should be excited about.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm so excited about it. And, we're going to get into big food and big pharma, and anybody who follows you knows some of these just staggering statistics that we're now coming, like it's becoming more mainstream, that I'm super excited about, but also the fringe things, like for me, like psychedelic treatments that have been known to treat that have been known to treat what is it called, treatment psychedelics that have been known to treat treatment-resistant depression and PTSD and all sorts of trauma. Now, like that was in the 70s that they found that out. And then, because Big Pharma wasn't able to capitalize on it, it kind of all went to the wayside. And there's a lot of treatments like this that I think were not money makers, that have not been looked into in years, for things mostly for mental health and mental illness. And I'm just so excited for that for there to be a resurgence of those studies. What do you believe is the truth about big food and big pharma?
Man, the truth is that we've got political parties and politicians and scientists that are completely corporately captured, that are deliberately hiding or obscuring life-saving information, life-changing information for Americans, especially children. The fact that we have studies that are being shown to members of Congress saying, look, Lucky Charms are healthier than ground beef, so we really need to be pushing that in our public schools. That is corruption right there. That is corruption. There's a certain time where you can look at studies and you can say, does this make sense? I mean, let's just look at this from a common sense perspective. Do you really think Lucky Charms are healthier than ground beef? No, we know this instinctually, but the studies are telling us they are, right? So sometimes you just have to say, my intuition as a mom, my intuition as just a human being is telling me that something isn't right here. And that is going to be more powerful than some of these studies. And then the truth is, of course, that they're paid for by these nutrition schools that are being funded by big food companies. So that is kind of the levels there, the rabbit trail of corruption that has to stop, because it is preventing Americans that are really trying to do their best, especially moms who are trying to do their best. Mothers have all of these different, stressors and decisions that they're trying to make on a daily basis, doing the best for their kids. We shouldn't also have to be hyper worried about poison in our environment, in our drinking water, and in our food on top of that. So these are different things that RFK has said he's going to be taking on day one.
I know, and we'll have to see, because a lot of politicians say they're going to do, and then they never do it. But I have a feeling we're going to see big changes, and I can't wait to see what they are.
I got to testify at the Senate with RFK Jr. in September of 2024, and a bunch of the people that were on that panel now, we're all in group chats and talking about different things behind the scenes that are going to be happening with this MAHA, or Make America Healthy Again movement. And the day after the election, President Trump had invited RFK Jr. and several of these different doctors and people in the holistic functional medicine health space to Mar-a-Lago to immediately start talking about policy change and the transition team that needs to happen. It's already in the works. One really cool thing that a lot of people don't know that President Trump has done is that even before the election, in case he did win, he started funding from his own pocket a transition team. So basically, a presidential candidate normally doesn't do that until the election is decided, because then they can use like government money, tax dollars to kind of help pay for these different people that are going to be in their administration, right? So President Trump and RFK Jr. deliberately wanted to avoid that trap, because that's when you get a bunch of lobbyists and government people trying to kind of infringe on what you're wanting to do. And then you have all these hands, in the cookie jar that you don't want there. So President Trump said, no, we're going to avoid that by me paying for all of this myself. And so that's what he did. And RFK got the go ahead before the election to start building that team out. So this has already been in the works, and you don't have any of these lobbyist gremlin goblin ghouls who are, now circling like sharks trying to get in, because they're not going to be able to. That's never been done. Ever.
Wow.
And President Trump had people talking about these plans the day after the election was decided on Wednesday. So that is super exciting to me, and it gives me a lot of hope. And look, like I said, you don't have to like Trump. I'm just saying, be excited about this. And whether you like him or not, every promise that he made during his first term, he really did it. If you look at like the White House has put out, his administration has put out like all this huge list of all these random promises he made on the campaign trail and stuff, and what he actually accomplished between 2016 and 2020. And he really did them all. So that should give, whether you liked what those were or not, he did them. So I think that should also kind of give some encouragement if you're worried about like, is the MAHA stuff really going to happen?
Yeah, for sure. Let's back up a little bit, because I want to know, like, how did Big Food and Big Pharma start sleeping together in the first place? Like, what do we know how that happened? Or is it not like that in other countries?
It's not like that in a lot of other countries. In fact, we are one of the only countries who allows pharmaceutical companies to advertise on TV. That is something that's not happening elsewhere in the world. Other countries think that is crazy, that we are watching TV and all of a sudden you see a commercial for antidepressants. But what's really shocking is that the reason those pills and treatments are advertised on American television is not actually so the patient will go to their doctor and say, hey, I saw a commercial for this antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication. I'd like to take it. That's not why they do it. They actually do it so they can capture media, so that the media then is beholden by advertising dollars and won't report the truth or negative side effects about these medications. That there is a reason why you did not see any reporting on, other potential treatments for COVID during the pandemic. It was because after every single news broadcast, you saw all brought to you by Pfizer. That is a massive problem that day one RFK is planning on fixing with President Trump. So that right there is very shocking to people in other countries. But a lot of this really can go back to John Rockefeller. John Rockefeller was basically imprisoning chiropractors, anybody who had an alternative view on medicine, because he wanted to kind of start Big Pharma and this huge pharmaceutical industry with byproducts of oil that he had, and didn't want anybody infiltrating that. So he created this entire system. He didn't want midwives anymore. He didn't want natural births. He wanted to hospitalize, medicalize everything. And so we have him to really thank for that, him to really thank for completely destroying our education system. He wanted workers. He didn't want thinkers. So the whole idea about public education and the Department of Education was really to get these kids in there and indoctrinated to become workers and to stop thinking and learn what we wanted them to learn. So it's a huge rabbit trail. And I know that when I say these things, again, what you brought up in the beginning, when I say these things, if you've never heard them before, you think this girl's nuts. She's a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
Look, you can look all of this up. I mean, this is in the history books. This isn't coming from Alex Clark. This is just look up the history of John Rockefeller and his story. So that's kind of how we ended up getting here and getting to this place where big food is feeding us poison and Big Pharma magically can step in and say, oh, we have the solution. Isn't that great? And so it's a very sad state of affairs for America.
Totally. Well, and tell us also about, I heard a statistic that you said something about the cigarette companies in the 80s, and talk about the cigarette companies in the 80s. What happened with them?
Yeah. So when the government finally came out and said, okay, yeah, you know what, maybe we were wrong on this, because remember, doctors were saying that cigarettes were completely safe, didn't cause lung cancer.
Right.
That's what everyone was told. That's why everybody was smoking. And then by the 80s, cigarettes we were seeing the popularity decline. The food companies came in, took the scientists from the cigarette companies and said, hey, you were able to get an entire generation of Americans addicted to cigarettes. What if you put your skills to the test on our processed food? We have all of these different crops, soybean oil, corn oil, all these things. We need to put it into something. We really want to ramp up ultra processed food. We want to make it as addictive as possible. If you guys can kind of put your skills to work, I think we could do this with the food. And so in the 80s, early 90s, you start to see these scientists really get to work. And that's where we're starting to see all of this stuff added to our food, like DHT, MSG, the same ingredients. You start seeing high fructose corn syrup at crazy levels. GMOs are invented. That wasn't the cigarette companies, but still you start to see the food industry completely change. It just becomes a business. It doesn't become about, healthy living, healthy eating. And one of the most glaring signs of evidence of that is that also during that same time period, the food pyramid came out that was being served into every single public school in America.
Yep.
And the food pyramid, the government allowed different groups, different agriculture groups and what have you, dairy lobby, whatever, to buy certain sizes of the pyramid.
Oh my God.
To rig it. And so when I found that out, I realized that everything I had learned as a millennial, as a 90s kid, everything that I had learned about health and food and nutrition was a lie. It was because of big food. We were told things like fat is bad for you. Fat is great for us. Real, true animal fat is great for us. Our brains need it to function. So telling all of these kids, this entire generation, my opinion, and then this is where it's fair. You can say this is conspiratorial, but hear me out. Where I'll get a little conspiratorial is saying, why was it so important to get so many Americans addicted to things that they knew were not healthy, that would impair brain development, that would impair our ability to critically think? And then the solution was to put us on mind-numbing, mind-altering prescription drugs at massive rates. What other reason could there be besides greed and money and having an ability to control us on this, on a massive scale, at least a little bit, because we're not all operating on all cylinders?
Yeah. Well, and also I just remember going to the doctors, and well-meaning, very like highly trained doctor in high school, because I'm having these ADHD symptoms. My hormones are all over the place. I have acne, hormonal acne. What do? They put me on birth control and they give me antibiotics. And the only thing as a side effect they say is like, oh, if you take antibiotics too long, it can turn your teeth blue. And I remember I just thought that was a weird symptom. But that was like as a woman in high school, or young woman in high school, all my friends were on birth control. It was never even a question. And if you had any, it was never like, oh, maybe the food that we're eating at I actually went to a Catholic school, but still the lunches were still the fried food, and everything was fried. It was the same food that was in public schools. And all of us were having, people were depressed. You never heard about depression in kids like 50 years ago. 12-year-olds were not committing suicide like they are nowadays.
Yeah, it's interesting. And 40% of our teenagers now struggle with anxiety and depression. You're exactly right that you never saw these like mass rates of suicide in kids that are super depressed. Everybody is over therapized. Everybody has a therapist starting as a child or a teenager now. You've got huge groups of teenage boys, 16, 17 years old, that are too scared to walk across the street and order from Chipotle. They've never even done that. They don't know how to tie a tie. You've got massive groups of teenagers who are too scared to learn how to drive. They're opting to not get their license. We have a huge generation of young people who are completely risk averse. They do not like challenges. They do not like feeling anything. They don't like feeling extreme, like hyper joyful moments. And they also don't like feeling life's lows, like sadness and things like that. In fact, when was the last time you heard a teenage kid say, I'm sad? No, they never use that word. They say, I'm depressed. It's because we completely medicalized this generation and told them that any feeling of extreme emotion, which is a normal human experience, to feel high highs and low lows is not good. That you just need to be operating at the same level all the time, basically never living life in color, never experiencing joy, never experiencing low lows. But that is the human experience, to have this like roller coaster of emotions. I mean, that is just living. And so you have these kids that are just operating on life on autopilot, and they're all prescribed antidepressants. Now, what is really scary about this, and I mean, you go to any like group of girls in high school right now, ask them how many of you are on Lexapro. Almost all of them will raise their hands, and they giggle about it, and they say, well, we call each other Lexa hoes. So that's how many are on these drugs. And what's crazy is that the main side effect of antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication is suicidal ideation, depression, and anxiety. How many school shooters were prescribed SSRIs or antidepressants? That's a huge thing that we should be looking into. By the way, the ones that we have looked into, all of them were prescribed them. So you see the rates of this explode. In fact, the FDA issued a black box warning because of the increase in suicidal ideation when taking SSRIs among adolescents. They had to add a black box warning because it was so severe. And let me remind you that over the summer of 2023, they approved Lexapro for kids as young as 7.
Wow. And your brain isn't even developed until you're in your early 20s, mid 20s.
There was a recent meta-analysis by The Lancet of 21 of the leading antidepressants that are on the market. They showed the short-term benefits were modest at best, and the long-term benefits were completely understudied. They said that in the same studies on antidepressants that the FDA used for approval, to get the drugs approved in the first place, showed that the drugs work barely better than a placebo.
Barely better than a placebo. And what I've noticed from personal experience, and also just from kind of asking around, like if you've taken a Zoloft or something like an SSRI before, the chances that you're going to end up taking it again are like almost 100%. Because the thing is, like when you come off of it, your depression, it comes back, and it comes back oftentimes worse than before.
This is what's interesting. And I did an amazing interview with Dr. Roger McFillin. He is a clinical psychologist, and this is his entire expertise, is spreading the word about the truth about antidepressants and ADHD. And so he's way smarter than me and, rattles off 100 bajillion statistics. But he talked about how when you are trying to get off SSRIs, is not that the depression is coming back. It's that your body is going through withdrawals. So you get addicted to the medication. And so it's not actually depression that's coming back. It's your body going through withdrawals because they're so unbelievably hard to get off and addictive, which nobody is told. The other thing that patients are not told in your 15-minute, at best, wellness checkup in the United States is you have a massive chance of getting a sexual dysfunction disorder taking SSRIs, where you will never be able to experience a true orgasm again. You will just not even have full sensation in your genitals. And we are seeing a massive amount of people coming out as victims to this. And the scary thing is that you don't have to be prescribed SSRIs for, several years to end up developing this problem. It could happen taking the drug in as little as days or weeks, and then you have it for life. So we're putting people that are, 7 years old on these drugs, and then they're, growing up and like, well, I guess I'm asexual, or I don't know. I have no feeling, or I don't feel anything. That's not normal. It could be a horrific side effect of your antidepressant that you were not told about. So again, are people like me, are people like RFK Jr. saying that we need to ban antidepressants or ban vaccines or ban birth control? No. What we are saying is that the American patient, when you go to the doctor, you are expecting them to lay out all of these risks and side effects so that you can make an informed decision, and they are not getting that information. So that right there is unethical. That is a major problem. You and I sure wasn't when you were going to the doctor and they said, let's put you on birth control. It was just told to me that you should do this for absolutely no reason. And I was on it for over a decade. Now I struggle with autoimmune disease and all these other issues that I can only attribute to the fact that I was on this massively endocrine disrupting pill for over a decade of my life without knowing the true risks.
Totally. I mean, I was on and I go back and forth because the thing is, I had postpartum, like, catastrophic anxiety after I had my son. Probably because I also was on birth control for a very a lot of years, and I have PCOS. My hormones are all fucking over the place. So now I'm trying to backtrack and figure out how am I going to heal myself naturally, because of course the doctor wants to put me on birth control, and also anyway. So, but when I was pregnant with my daughter, my anxiety and depression came back really bad, and I was pregnant, and I'm like, what are my options? They're like, well, go back on the Zoloft. It worked for you. It helped. And so I did, and it helped. But the thing is, it's like, and my daughter is like, she looks okay. I don't know, like, I just don't know. And it's just hard to know what is making kids these days. Like, my son, he was in vitro. I guess my point to all of that is, like, also when we're pregnant with babies and we're taking antidepressants, and it's like the child now has ADHD symptoms, and we're like, well, why? They eat healthy. They've never been on any drugs. It's like, well, what were you doing when you were pregnant with them? There's so, and also it changes our DNA. When you have a baby, now this baby is actually kind of mutated depending on what you've been doing to your body for the last 10, 20 years, I want to get into something that I think is like, it's kind of fringe conspiracy, and I'm not sure if you have any opinion on this, but do you think our Wi-Fi is like killing us too?
Oh my gosh, great question. Actually, the Wi-Fi Bluetooth thing is very real and very disturbing, and should be extremely concerning. So I had this amazing woman on my show. August Bryce is her name, and she is the founder of this whole website, store, and then community called Tech Wellness. And the reason she started it is that she had like debilitating physical symptoms when we first had like cell phones come out and stuff. And she could not figure out what was wrong with her. Every single time she would hold her cell phone, her hands would burn and everything. And she's like, what is going on with me? And so she started looking into EMFs. And then, of course, now we transition into Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all of this. And so she is very, very hypersensitive to EMFs and Bluetooth. That's electromagnetic frequencies that are coming off of our Bluetooth devices and cell phones. She is not an anomaly. This is a phenomenon that is affecting millions of Americans. The problem is a lot of people don't realize or think that that's what it is. But she has taught me a lot. And one of those things is, number one, absolutely never, ever wear AirPods. ever. I do not own them. The whole time, the Bluetooth trend, I've always used corded headphones, and those are kind of coming back in anyway, so that's great. She sells some really, really cute, like rose gold ones on her website, and I'm not affiliated. I get no kickback from people going to her site at all, but she has great products for all these types of things. She sells like a kill switch so that you can just click one button and your Wi-Fi is completely turned off at night in your home. It makes it super easy, and then you can just turn it back on when you need it back on. But we should not be sleeping next to our phone with the Bluetooth on and the Wi-Fi on. So when I sleep, it is extremely important. Your phone should be off. Use a Hatch alarm clock or something else and make sure the Bluetooth is turned off that. Or I sleep with my phone on, and it's next to my bed on my nightstand, but I make sure that I have it on airplane mode, so it's not emitting EMS. And then you can still receive text and everything. You turn off airplane mode, and then all your texts will come up when you wake up. So that's how I sleep, and you get deeper sleep, better sleep. If you're somebody that struggles a lot with falling asleep, try keeping your phone out of your room or sleeping with airplane mode on. I am telling you, game changer. And get out all of the Bluetooth devices in your room. Turning off your Wi-Fi at night for your entire family could be a huge game changer. But don't forget all of the things that they're putting freaking Bluetooth on now, which is like your washing machine, your refrigerator. It's unbelievable. We do not need all of this.
Yeah.
It's microwaving our brains is what it's doing. God. So yeah, if you struggle with like tingly feeling, joint pain, extreme migraines, feeling like you have chronic fatigue but can't ever fall asleep, like a constant like buzzing and feeling. If I am on a long flight and I'm holding my phone in my hand, like scrolling for the entire 3-5 hour flight, I can always feel my hand feels like kind of hot and burning. And I know it's because I've been holding my phone the whole time. I'm serious. You start to notice it when you start to eliminate it a little bit in your life. It's really fascinating stuff. But yeah, her name, the episode I did is with August Bryce. So if you just Google like Alex Clark, August Bryce, you can listen to it. And it's a phenomenal episode.
Totally. It's so funny because so people attribute this kind of information to being woo-woo, but now
it's not woo-woo. She goes through all the scientific data on the podcast. I'm just not the person. I'm not like a memorizer like that to like know all of it offhand. That's why I interview experts that do. So she comes on and she's like, okay, this study. I mean, they know it.
Yeah, they know it.
It's proven.
So it just feels okay. Well, I feel like people are going to be so overwhelmed when they hear this. They're like, okay, well, I can't. Like, I'm living on planet Earth, so where do we start? Because
you start where you want to. You pick one thing and you focus on that for a couple weeks. Okay, so there's a lot of things that you can do that are simple swaps that will drastically improve your health and your family's health. Switching all plastic utensils that you cook and bake with and pots and pans to being either stainless steel or cast iron and glass.
Yeah,
that is it.
Iron.
Or wood.
I need to do that. Because there's so many companies that are like, no non-toxic, non-stick. And I'm kind of like, how does it not stick?
So there might be a couple of them that like maybe they are really non-toxic, maybe Caraway, maybe Green Pan or whatever. And I don't know if you can say that. There might be some companies that claim to be non-toxic that are. Here's the problem, and this is why I'm anti all of it no matter what, and it's for a separate reason beyond like chemicals. The reason is I think these pots and pans are horrible quality and they do not last long. So whatever they're made out of, I just don't think that they are like lifelong pots and pans. I think they've got a lifespan of like 1 to 2 years. Now, why? And they're so expensive. It's just because aesthetically they're prettier on your stovetop. I just think it's stupid. I think that stainless steel pans are just as beautiful and they're amazing quality and they last forever. You can pass them down, when after several decades, if you want to pass those down to your kid when they're getting their first apartment, you can give them to your kid and then you get new pots and pans. I mean, those are things that like last generations. So to me, I don't understand buying this super expensive aesthetic set of non-toxic quote unquote pots and pans that you can't even heat to high heat because they fall apart.
Totally.
You know what I mean? It's just like common sense to me. It's just dumb. So I use stainless steel or cast iron to cook in, period, point blank. That's it, stainless steel utensils. Another thing is pick one ingredient that you've learned that isn't good that you want to see cut out of your family's pantry. So if that's artificial food dye, then stick with that. If it is high fructose corn syrup, stick with that. If it's seed oils, stick with that. And then you're going to eliminate everything in your home that has that ingredient in your fridge, in your freezer, and in your cabinet. Likely it's not going to be in your fridge, but it's probably going to be in your freezer or cabinet. And so you're going to purge just everything with that ingredient. You're going to actively shop at the store and avoid that ingredient. Then when you feel confident, like, oh my gosh, I always notice when there's something with artificial dye, I'm going to move on to seed oils. Now we're going to tackle seed oils in our family after, a few weeks or a month or so of focusing on that. So you will become skilled. It doesn't all have to happen overnight. And the other thing is, perfection being 100% non-toxic is impossible. That's not a real goal. The goal is to be to lessening your toxin load as much as you possibly can. There are going to be moments where you have a family graduation dinner or a anniversary dinner where you're going to be going out to eat, and I'm sure consuming something that you wouldn't normally at home. That's okay, because part of health and wellness and being the healthiest that we can be, one of the most important keys to that is community, right? So if you are sitting in your apartment and saying no to every single social outing because you have to avoid seed oils, that's not going to be healthy either. But the key there is okay, but I am making almost all of my meals at home. I'm not door dashing almost every meal. I'm packing my lunch to bring to work, and my family rarely ever eats out, so that when those opportunities come for you to have community and get together with family and friends, you're able to say yes confidently, knowing my toxin load is so low because on the typical everyday, I am avoiding these things. And, thinking about things like in your personal care products with artificial fragrance. If you want to start with something like that, instead of the food, you could start with eliminating anything in your home with artificial fragrance. So that is topical perfumes you spray, that can be candles. And it doesn't mean you can't ever use perfume or candles. There are non-toxic swaps that have essential oils and beeswax. And actually, with candles, oh my gosh, there are some amazing beeswax essential oil brands. What I love about beeswax candles is it has the same effect, negative ions, as sitting in front of the ocean. So actually, there's like so many health benefits to lighting those candles, because there's a reason why when you sit in front of the ocean, when you go on vacation and it's a beach vacation and you're sitting in front of the ocean all day and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so relaxed. It isn't just, you're like, oh, I guess it was just I needed a vacation. No, there's actual negative ions going on that are helping relax you sitting in front of the ocean. You get the same effect from lighting beeswax candles. So these are really fun swaps. Now, what I will say is that things like non-toxic perfume or non-toxic body wash soap, non-toxic candles, they are more expensive. So what happens is people get hung up and get really pissed off at me whenever I give these like alternative companies for toothpaste or candles or body wash. Like, well, this is insane. It's a $25 body wash. How can any family afford this? I'm like, here's the real answer. We don't actually need soap. This is something that, like, modern culture, we've been obsessed with, like, you have to use soap. You actually don't. But like, if you want to, then yeah, it's going to be more expensive. But like, you can just go without it. But like, if you're wanting all these super non-toxic swaps, there you go. So that's the thing. Or you can make your own. People get upset about, if you're like really on a budget, which I understand,
use
and
baking
you are like
soda. That's cheap.
Yeah. If you're seeing the prices for laundry detergent that's non-toxic, you're like, this is freaking outrageous.
Yeah.
Who's spending this on laundry detergent? You can make things like that yourself. The thing is that you're paying for the convenience again, and then not having all these chemicals. But you can avoid them for way cheaper, literally pennies, if you want to make it yourself. And then the last thing I want to say is, the biggest things that will have a positive impact on your health that you can change tomorrow are free. It's getting movement. It's getting sunlight. It's hanging out in your community. Like I said, spending time with friends and family and your children. Those are things that are free that you can do. Eating real whole foods. So when I say real whole foods, it doesn't mean that it has to be, this super expensive organic item. If you can, obviously that is the best option. If you can do grass-fed, grass-finished, organic, regeneratively farmed, that's like the top of the pinnacle of the list. Okay. If you can afford that easily, then like absolutely do that. But if you can't, eating real food items, so food that could just be an ingredient, ground beef, bell pepper, egg, rice, beans, chicken, even if it's not organic or grass-fed, those are going to be so much more nutrient dense and beneficial than Hot Pockets and I don't know, pot stickers or whatever, and Stouffer's mac and cheese that are on the frozen food aisle. Those are real food items, right? And if you can look, by the way, if you are looking at a processed food item and every single item in the ingredients list is an ingredient itself that you recognize and pronounce and could have in your own pantry to make that item, then you know it's clean and it's okay to eat. A good example of that is Simple Mills cookies. If you look at Simple Mills chocolate chip cookies, every single ingredient on those, which it's a processed food item, is something that I could find in my kitchen. But if you look at Chips Ahoy, you're going to see things you're like, what the heck even is
you got to go on a highway in New Jersey to find those ingredients.
So focusing on those things, it really doesn't have to be complicated. Start with that. Real ingredients, sunlight, community, movement. That's it. Start with, eliminating one thing from your life, whether that's in your personal care products or food, and then going from there gradually. It doesn't have to be this race that you're running, and it has to all be done this week. You can take months, even a year. You could say this year, we're about to be in the new year. I don't know when this comes out, but we're about to, we're in a new year, or we're about to be in a new year. You could say this year is the year of artificial dyes for my family. We're eliminating artificial dyes, and that's it for an entire calendar year. And then see what improvements come. So it can be as complicated or as complex or expensive as you want it to be. It's not the health and wellness influencers that are forcing you to buy this toothpaste or candle. That's your call, but it really starts with simple things.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, especially coming from somebody like me who's quite an extremist, because I mean, the one thing that you didn't say that I feel like I need to add is alcohol. And I think the way that we look at alcohol now is like how we looked at cigarettes, in the 80s, maybe when people were just starting to come out to be like, oh, well, actually, this is the biggest like hoax on humanity ever. And then there's the people who are like, oh, but Jesus drank alcohol. Yeah, but like they didn't drink it like we've come to nowadays, especially the way with the pesticides and the wine and everything that it's killing us slowly. And I know that that's kind of the one thing that I feel so much better when I don't consume, because it is a toxin and a carcinogen, where anything else on the shelf with that amount of toxins and that carcinogenic would have to have like the black box label on it, a black box
here's
warning.
A tip. I just learned 2 tips about ordering wine that could be helpful if you do want to have a glass of wine. If you are wanting to have a glass of wine, 2 little hacks that could help make it a little bit healthier is obviously, one, asking if any of the wines on the list are organic. If you can find a restaurant that serves organic wine, opt for that. If you are ordering organic wine because you want it at your home, I'm not sponsored by them. Another company that's great is like Dry Farm Wines. They're all organic wines, low sugar content. That's a great company. 2, if organic wine isn't an option, but you really want a glass and you're out to eat at dinner, you could ask for a single origin wine and make sure it's like Italy or Europe, something like that, where they're not using glyphosate on the crops. So that's something that could help make it a little bit better if you are going to drink.
Okay. All right. I love those tips. Okay. Glyphosate. Let's talk about this, because that's what really fucking pisses me off when we think we're eating like a healthy cucumber and then we're like, oh, it's actually like psych. It's not really healthy. We actually sprayed poison on it. What the fuck is going on? Are we getting rid of glyphosate? Is RFK going to do something about that?
I think so. I'm sure that is part of the plan. Yeah, I don't know what he's going to be doing with that in particular. But I mean, talking about chemicals in our food and what we're spraying on our crops is absolutely on the list. I do know this. It is very, very important to get organic produce, because yes, it is being sprayed with a bunch of stuff. And sometimes, and this is why it's really important to know your farmer. If you find a local farmer that is farming without using those types of chemicals, herbicides, pesticides, whatever that you don't want on your food, sometimes it's really expensive to kind of go through all those hoops, and it's really complicated process to be called like a literal organic farm, okay? But there are a lot of local farms to you that don't necessarily say, like, they can't say legally, like, we're organic, but they are, you know what I mean? Because they're not using those things. So what's really important is to go to your farmer's market and ask about the farming practices of those little farmers there that have all of their produce out. So asking them, like, what do you spray on your crops? How are you keeping bugs away? Things like that. Maybe they'll say like apple cider vinegar and blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, oh, great. Like, they are a clean organic farm, even if they can't say technically organic. So what it really all comes down to is knowing your farmer, to find these things out, and shopping locally. That's going to also be way less expensive than going to Whole Foods, for example, and getting your vegetables there. But yeah, it's sad. And see, that's the sad thing when we talk about like the trickery that's going on with American food. How many families are just going to the store and picking up, a vegetable, and they're like, well, I picked up a vegetable. Now, is the vegetable better than Pringles? Yes, of course. But the point is, it's like that should just be the end of it, right? But then you have all these things like, oh, well, I didn't know it could be sprayed with this and sprayed with this. That shouldn't be happening. So I think one thing is educating our farmers about regenerative farming and different organic practices. Sometimes a lot of them just don't know. And I know that is going to be something that RFK is doing. But glyphosate is a neurotoxin, and it completely destroys the gut microbiome. So when you are sending, and by the way, it was like crazy levels of glyphosate when it was tested on our American school lunches sprayed on the food that our kids are eating. I mean, it's like 80 to 90% levels of glyphosate in American food served at public schools.
Wow.
So what that's doing to your child's gut is completely destroying it. And that's where you're getting all of these allergies, this increase in asthma. If your kid has behavior issues and stuff, look into what they're eating. Are they eating school lunch, or are you packing their lunch? And then what are you packing in their lunch? Another big thing is, are they drinking milk from school? The milk served at public school, a lot of it has carrageenan in it, which can really increase rate for allergies and asthma. It could also cause, I talked to Zen Honeycutt about this on my show recently. She is the founder of Moms Across America. If you want to learn about glyphosate and GMOs, that's what that entire episode was about. Her kid was drinking the American served public school milk and had this like red ring around his mouth that they could not get rid of. And you know that when kids have that and moms are like, stop licking your lips, you must be licking your lips. It's not that. A lot of times it's one of these like chemicals in their food. For her kid, it was an allergy to carrageenan. He stopped drinking the milk at school, went away.
Wow. Yeah. And also probably the hormones pumped in those cows. Anyway, I'm sure those cows are not grass-fed, pasture-raised.
Well, all of the chicken that's served at public schools, as well as Chick-fil-A, is pumped with aviary contraceptives. So
Okay.
it's like
So they're
chicken
not
birth
getting
control
knocked
for
up?
some reason. So that's also affecting all of these different things. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, well we have to wrap up, but I want to leave on a positive note. So let's talk about but I really did want to ask what's going on with Kellogg's. I want to ask you about Kellogg's first, and then we're going to wrap it up quick. But what is going on with Kellogg's? I heard you talking about that on your Instagram. The algorithm knew that I would like it, and I'm just it seems like they just kind of shut the door. Is this something that you think we're going to be able to change with the new elected officials, or are they just like a private company and they're going to be able to keep giving us toxins forever?
Well, RFK announced the day after the election that Kellogg's was going to be something that he is going to focus on, and different companies doing similar things to like Kellogg's is to our food. He specifically mentioned Fruit Loops on MSNBC, so you can look that up. But the food babe, Vani Hari, is who really led this Kellogg's protest, and me and Callie Means and several other people in the health and wellness space, different doctors. Dr. Will Cole, he has a podcast with Dear Media. He was there. So we all marched, and with thousands of American moms and kids and families to the Kellogg's headquarters in Battle Creek, Michigan this fall. And we had over 450,000 signatures from Americans demanding that they remove artificial food dyes from their cereal and BHT, which is a known carcinogen. So what's really crazy about Kellogg's is that they have already committed, and what's very frustrating about Kellogg's is they have already committed to removing these ingredients in the batches of cereal that they are creating for other countries, and they make those batches in the United States. Kellogg's is cooking up cereal with cancer-causing, behavior-altering ingredients in the U.S. and giving that poison to our kids, but willing to make non-poison cereal or less poison cereal for kids around the world. So make it make sense there. The math doesn't add up right there. Only because it's cheaper and they don't care, and they're getting our kids addicted and they're making money off of us. What's really evil is that we show up on their doorstep there in Michigan, and they refuse to come outside to talk to us, number one. Number two, someone that works for them held up a sign that said, "Get off our lawn," in the window at the office to us. Literally, there are children holding up signs saying, "Please stop poisoning our cereal." And Kellogg's employees are holding signs saying, "Get off our lawn." This is diabolical. The other thing I will say, Since we testified at the US Senate on chronic disease and mentioned Kellogg's by name at the Senate, Kellogg's has stopped posting on their social media. It has been 6 weeks at the time of recording this since Kellogg's has made one post on social media. They completely stopped posting. They also reported a Q3 earnings loss since all of this of $11 million. Victoria Kellogg, who is the great granddaughter of W.K. Kellogg, who took cornflakes out to the masses, came on and did a interview with Vani Hari, the food babe, this week. And she said that she completely supports our campaign and actually said she was willing to come out and stand against her own family, even though it would hurt her financially, because she feels so convicted about what they're doing to American children. So this is massive amounts of press have been done about this. I mean, we're testifying at the Senate. We're showing up at their doorstep. They refuse to talk to us. They refuse to remove these ingredients from their food. This is one of the biggest PR mistakes I've ever seen a company make. I mean, this is ever in history. It's unbelievable that they are still ignoring it. So what it's going to take, the problem is getting this information to people that are still buying these cereals and getting them to stop buying. So their mindset is like, oh, well, the people that are like complaining about this are all crunchy and in the health and wellness space. They were never buying our cereal in the first place. So we have to be like talking about this. Those of us that are in the know and we're already not buying the cereal, we have to be talking about this so that people who don't know hear about it and they stop buying the cereal. Because when that happens, they will be taking a loss that they can't ignore, and then they're going to be forced to make a move. All we are asking, we're not saying that kids cannot eat cereal anymore, but what we are asking is, look, if you are going to eat Fruit Loops, if you are going to eat cornflakes, if you are going to eat whatever else, they've got like a squishmallow cereal, a baby shark cereal marketed to kids with artificial dyes that we know cause cancer. If you're going to sell this in the United States, can we please just be given the same ingredients that you're willing to give kids in other countries? That is literally all we are asking for, and they refuse to do it. So we be demanding that from Kellogg's and using your money to shop with other brands that are not doing that, like Lovebird cereal, for example, which is great. There's zero bad ingredients. In fact, Lovebird has pledged, if you are in charge of, or can ask the person in charge of like dietary stuff at your kid's school, if you go to them and say, hey, whatever you're being charged to pay to have like Kellogg cereals in the school, they will match it or even give a lower price to you. So you can get cereal for the kids that doesn't have bad stuff in it. So you have to look that up on Lovebird's social media, but they are willing to do that. If you bring that information to your school, they will work with your school districts, which is huge. So there are good food companies who are willing to kind of like help create this parallel food snack economy that we really need.
Wow. Well, that is a positive note to end on, because not everybody out there is trying to kill us and our children and make us all stupid and fat. And I'm happy. And
a lot are. But a lot are.
But a lot are. But
you know, difference.
I'm happy that you don't have to be kind of known as a maniac and a fringe person of society to now believe that this is true. That, you know, big food and big pharma do not have our best interest, have not had our best interest in mind. And I'm so excited to see what's going to happen with our new elected officials to, you know, get some good changes with Make America Healthy Again. And thank you so much for kind of bringing it to the people, because I think that's how I found you. I'm not really sure. You kind of like take all this information that looks boring on you know, like RFK's page, and I'm like, oh, she's cute. Let me listen to her. So,
well, thank you. I'm honored. Yeah. So I'm the host of Culture Apothecary. It is a health and wellness podcast. Absolute, you know, not hiding it. I am conservative politically, which is kind of fun. Not every episode I do is political, but I am, you know, coming from that perspective. So that's kind of different for the health and wellness space. If you happen to align or not, I mean, you'll like a lot of my episodes anyway, but we do 2 episodes a week, anywhere you get your podcast, Culture Apothecary. I interview different experts who are providing their own remedy to heal a sick culture. And that could be physically, mentally, or spiritually. So all of my episodes fall in one of those 3 categories. And yeah, we're just on this mission to heal a sick culture. My audience is for the most part, women 25 to 35, but a lot of husbands like the show too. And it's really fun. So if you are somebody that does lean right politically, or maybe this is your first time, you're like, oh my gosh, like I don't even know what I am. I feel politically homeless. Like everything, I've always voted blue my entire life. And now like my world is like falling apart, splitting at the seams, like as everything is different. Cause there's a lot of people right now that feel politically homeless. You might like my show because it's just a lot of common sense. We can come together on the health issue. And then, you kind of hear more like center right ideas that maybe you align with a little bit more at this point in your life. I don't know. Or maybe, you're not conservative at all, but I think you'll still like the show based on the health stuff. So come on over. You can watch the episodes on the Real Alex Clark YouTube channel as well.
Yay. Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.